good investment idea at the moment is really hard because in the short term there's so much uncertainty. We've got an upcoming general election here in the UK, Brexit's still unresolved, and further afield we've got trade wars, currency wars, the list goes on. So this week on the Investing in the Go podcast, we decided that we'd have a look at some megatrends. Megatrends are those powerful, transformative forces that could change the global economy, business, and even society over the long term. They're those things that have irreversible consequences for the world around us. Think the discovery of electricity, the invention of cars and aeroplanes, the internet, all those things that have transformed the way that we live our lives. We asked the FundCalibre research team to give us some examples of megatrends and funds that could tap into their potential.
This week, President Trump served notice that the US will be quitting the Paris Climate Change Agreement on the 6th of November next year. This action comes against the popular tide of opinion that more needs to be done to tackle the problem before it's too late. Another area of concern is resource scarcity. According to the United Nations, the global population will surpass 9.7 billion by 2050, at which point they predict the world's agriculture systems will not be able to supply enough food for everyone. The UN takes this a step further by stating that demand for fresh water will exceed supply by 40% in some cities. Elite-rated Pictet Global Environmental Opportunities Funds goes well beyond climate change and addresses a full range of global environmental challenges. Manager Luciano Diana told us about one of his U.S. holdings tackling water efficiency.
Ecolab is a company that provides solutions for industrial clients as well as hotels and restaurants to manage their water properly. So they help the recycling of the water, the processing, and more this will be crucial when we think about hotels in Las Vegas. In 20, 30 years, 40 years time, they will all have to be self-sufficient from a water perspective, because there is not going to be much water in Las Vegas. And a company like Ecolab is going to give the technology to do that.
So for anyone wanting to support rather than quit climate change initiatives, this may be worth a look.
Our second megatrend is urbanisation. According to some research from PwC, more than half the world's population live in urban areas, and 1.5 million people are added to the global urban population every week, most of which are in emerging market countries. So 2/3 of the world's population could be living in urban areas by 2050. With this urban migration, space and accommodation will become more of an issue in major cities, placing huge demands on infrastructure, services, job creation, the climate and the environment. India is a great example of where this is taking place. It has been slow to urbanise, but this is changing fast, so investors could consider the elite-rated Goldman Sachs Indian Equity Fund, IIFL India Equity Opportunities, or Stewart Investors Indian Subcontinent Sustainability.
Another megatrend is the shift in global economic power. Emerging markets now account for around 80% of global economic growth and 85% of growth in global consumption, more than double their share than the 1990s. China is at the centre of this change, given it is set to replace the US as the largest global economy in the late 2020s, when as little as 15 years ago the economy was a tenth of the size of the US. As the US has become more concerned that China will overtake it as a superpower, so tensions have increased and trade wars have begun. Niall Gallagher, manager of Gamstar Continental European Equity Fund, gave us his view on trade wars recently.
I think the China-US stuff is much more important. And I think it's much broader than a global trade war. I think what it comes down to more than anything else is the US waking up to the fact that 2 decades of technology transfer, which the Chinese often insist on as part of dealing with US and European companies, is beginning to hand too much of an advantage to China. So I think this is something that's going to go on for quite some time. But I think it's a more profound adjustment, and it's more than just about trade. It's about how China settles into its position as potentially the largest economy in the world.
And Martin Lau, manager of the elite-rated First State Greater China Growth Fund, doesn't think the US-China trade wars are going away anytime soon either.
Yes, actually, the trade war, we believe, is a huge subject, and we also believe it is going to be something which would last for many, many years. It depends on the dinner between Trump or Xi Jinping or whatever. Sometimes it can be better, sometimes it can be worse. But our view is that this is going to be this relates to two big economies with different kind of value systems and having a conflict. The way that we look at it is, first of all, it's clearly negative for the economy. So when you have two largest economies of the world trying to, fight against each other, it's bad for global economy. And we've seen that with global growth, and we've seen that with bond yields. People expect the economy is going to weaken further.
Next up is demographic and social change. Changes in global demographics will also bring major challenges and opportunities for business in the future. For example, last year, for the first time in history, people aged 65 or above outnumbered children under 5 years of age globally. By 2050, 1 in 4 people living in Europe and North America could be aged over 65, with the number of people aged over 80 predicted to triple. Healthcare and automation are likely to become more important as populations age, as will the need for income, as life expectancy figures continue to rise and the longer is spent in retirement. Polar Capital Global Healthcare Trust is an obvious option to tap into this theme. Earlier this year, we asked manager James Douglas what he saw as the biggest theme within healthcare.
Healthcare is such a broad church that pinning down a single long-term trend is pretty difficult. If pushed, however, I'd point to the marriage between healthcare and technology as being the single biggest long-term trend.
Right.
Healthcare companies are investing in and already using technology to change the way that healthcare is being managed, delivered and paid for.
Which brings us nicely onto our fifth and final megatrend, technology. Now, technology is essential for all of these other megatrends to succeed, meaning it's become a megatrend in its own right. We've all seen the success of Amazon, where it's been changing and disrupting multiple marketplaces. So investors might like to consider funds like elite-rated Smith & Williamson Artificial Intelligence or AXA Framlington Global Technology as a potential route to tap into this trend. Manager Jeremy Gleeson talked to us about some technical innovations recently.
The really exciting thing about digital payments and the shift away from cash and check, believe it or not, there are parts of the world that still use checks quite significantly, is the fact that people will increasingly become or be comfortable with a cashless society. And one big driver for that, which isn't going away anytime soon, is demographics. So definitely the younger generations, the millennials, as they're commonly referred to, are very comfortable about not carrying any cash with them and paying on card or paying using their mobile phone when they need to make any sort of transaction. And I think that is a transition which is still relatively in its infancy and will have many, many years to run.
If you'd like to find out more about these funds, please visit FundCalibre.com and please remember to subscribe to Investing on the Go podcast.